The presence of demonstrators continues to grow outside of the Hennepin County Courthouse as jurors deliberate.
And Julia Jenae standing by for us with a preview of the boy in the box trial.
That's right, Julie. This jury has been sworn in, and opening statements are expected to happen around 10. Yesterday, during jury selection, Timothy Ferreter appeared to be very confident in the process and in his legal team.
The jury deliberated for 9 hours before reaching a verdict of guilty across the board. Robert Sylvester Kelly faced 9 counts.
That's right, Judge Ashley. We are here at the Lorson Ranch subdivision. This is where he lived with his father, Al Stout, his stepmother, who's on trial for his murder, Letitia Stout, and his 2 sisters. This is where the community was looking for him, wanting to know where he was back in January of 2020. And what's amazing is 3.5 years later, and we are still seeing messages like this one behind me. And after Wendy Adelson was turned around at this location, she completed her stop at the store and then went to lunch with friends. It's there that an investigator interrupted that lunch to let her know the tragic news of her ex-husband's shooting.
The video that went viral of that shooting death drove hundreds of thousands into the street demonstrating. Ahmaud's father, Marcus Arbery, recalls going to the scene of his son's death and shares his thoughts on that emotional visit. This happened February 23rd, 2020. The video was not released until over 2 months later. So what was happening before you saw the video? You said you were told that this was a home invasion. Tell me about what was going through your mind when you first heard that.
I know it was a lie because my kid don't go out like that. He had that to do. He had that to do. He got his mom, his aunts, all of them. Anything he wanted, he got it. He was the baby. Anything he called his mama for, his dad, his brother, uncle, he got it. My son had dreams. That's why he worked out. He ran. He had dreams.
I had a chance to sit down with the jury foreperson the day after the verdict while covering this trial there, and he opened up about everything, including some initial bias against Paltrow and her wealth, to an inside joke about one of Sanderson's attorneys.
They asked me some questions. Do I know who this person is? I said, of course I know who she is, you know. And so, and so it was. I thought natural selection would eliminate me from the jury pool. So.
And yet you were.
And yet I was.
In this little pool of 10 jurors, and then you weren't even an alternate.
Nope.
And you went all the way to being the foreperson on this jury. What was that like being picked as the foreperson?
Well, so we actually had a gentleman in there who had a British accent, and I said he should speak for us because everything sounds smarter coming from a Brit.
Well, Vinny, I will say we've been talking about the fact that the judge still has to hear arguments on the third-degree murder charge, but we've been told by our sources that jury selection will still start on Monday.
Just a kid.
Aura about him, you know what I mean? Like, we always knew it would be something that he would make history.
Vinny, we've taken that in-depth look at not only the background of George Floyd, but everything in this case, but his friends and family saying that background is very important to understand the man that he was. There's not only the firing of all 4 officers who were involved, there was then the arrest of the principal officer, Derek Chauvin, and there were multiple charges against him.
One of the most effective parts of the prosecutor's cross-examination is when she asks Travis McMichael what Ahmaud Arbery wasn't doing, and she gives a list.
And he never yelled at you guys? Never threatened you at all?
Yeah, he did not threaten me verbally, no ma'am.
It essentially was poking a hole over and over in the defense's claim of self-defense. In Phoenix, we are expecting the state to rest their case. I wake up July 17th. It's a regular trial day. The biggest thing I'm looking for is whether or not the defendant is going to testify in his own defense. The defense is saying that the state hasn't proven their case. They're saying that there's not even enough evidence for a jury to even go back into the deliberation room. This is a standard procedure that happens after the state rests its case. 9 times out of 10, this is denied.
I will order the defendant released.
He actually threw the case out and acquitted Michael Turney.
That was the jaw drop moment. We thought there was a possibility of a not guilty. Had no idea that the judge was going to be the judge and the jury in this case.
New York is Julia Jenae from Court TV. Julia, a 20-year sentence for Ghislaine Maxwell. What is your reaction to this?
putting it into perspective, these prosecutors were asking for 30 years to 55 years. So to hear that this number is 20 years, you can understand how those survivors would react to hearing it being so low compared to what prosecutors were asking for. But when you look at the guidelines, it does fall within that range. Just into our Court TV newsroom, breaking news out of New York. A jury has found Marvel actor Jonathan Majors guilty of assaulting his former girlfriend, Grace Jabari. You could have a pausing or tolling of the statute of limitations where it wouldn't start until things were discovered. What's going to happen inside of that courtroom? Could this entire case against David Swift go away? Mike King, let's talk about where we are in the case right now, starting with what Chanley was standing right in front of. She is literally there in front of what was a crime scene, is a crime scene, and they're going to demolish it before the trial starts. What's your thought on that decision when it could be somewhat important in the case? Michael Sterling, that he wants to call her as soon as possible because he thinks she's got failing health. He's worried about whether or not she's going to make it to the defense case once he starts. The judge denied him being able to call her out of order. The ramifications nationally. We've got the Uvalde case where we saw officers not going in. The officers in Tennessee at the private school where there was the shooting rushing in, and they were hailed as heroes in that. And you could tell from the public that's what they want to see in situations like that. But will a case like this really impact other situations? And I want to bring up another case because we are seeing in cases like the murder of George Floyd where the other officers who stood by were charged for not acting, for not intervening.
Yeah, I mean, those are excellent points. And a case like this is going to have significant implications